Thanks for staying with us. Time now for Africa News with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, activists who have fought for more than a decade to get France to play a part in holding alleged perpetrators of the Rwandan genocide to account welcome the start of the trial of Pascal Simbikangwa, Kigali's former intelligence chief. Also, the suspect in the killing of the Tunisian opposition figure that kicked off a year of turbulence in Tunisia is reportedly killed in a raid on a suspected militant hideout. Police say Kamel Gadgadi died in a shootout almost exactly a year after his alleged victim was gunned down. And for so long associated with conflict, the return of relative peace to Mogadishu has breathed fresh life into its beach scene. As more people feel more comfortable splashing out on security, there's also splashing out of security of a different kind. That is lifeguards. First up, both the French and Rwandan governments will be following closely. Today, an historic trial kicked off. Rwanda's former intelligence chief Pascal Simbikangwa appeared in a Paris court on Tuesday on charges of complicity in war crimes, the 1994 genocide in which at least 800,000 Tutsis and moderate Hutus were slaughtered in their homeland. Almost 20 years on, and it's France's first such case. It's in the past been accused of turning a blind eye to the mass killings and even offering safe haven to those suspected of being behind it. While our correspondent sent us this report on the families still living with the memory of the bloodshed. Jenny Clover and Thais Bruick.
This woman is one of the few people who agreed to testify against Pascal Simbikangwa. In August 1993, shopkeeper Clementine Nakure was travelling to the north of the country. She claimed she was taken by his henchmen. Still in shock, she says she was beaten for nearly an hour.
When I arrived in his office, Simbikangwa had a gun and a club. He accused me of working for the intelligence services of the RPF. I replied, "I don't even know what you mean." With each answer, he struck me with the butt of the gun. Whenever I repeated, "Forgive me, I'm not a spy," he continued to hit me again and again.
Few journalists had the courage to criticize the regime. These articles are now preserved here in the Iwachu Center. Former chief editor Sam Godi is a key witness at the trial. He says he was kidnapped and tortured for 4 days after publishing an editorial which portrayed Simbikangwa as the leader of the death squads and this cartoon.
On the fourth day, Captain Simbikangwa called me for the fourth time to his office. He told me, "I'll give you mercy under one condition. You can write anything about the president, you can write anything about the ministers, the MIND, but you can no longer talk about the death squads."
In downtown Kigali, in an area called Kiyovu, the captain is accused of organizing blockades where Tutsis were arrested or executed. For example, near the Santa Familia Church, where thousands of people were killed. This former militiaman claimed he worked at one of the blockades under the orders of Simbikangwa.
He was someone important, a captain. He toured the city in his car and gave orders, all the instructions. He said that the Tutsis should die. He scoured all areas of the city to give us instructions.
After 9 years in jail, Emmanuel started a new life as a motorcycle taxi driver. But memories of the massacres, for him as for the victims, are more vivid than ever as we approach the 20th anniversary of the genocide.
Well, Simon Foreman is the lawyer representing the Collective of Civil Parties for Rwanda, the CPCR. It's worked for 13 years to get a case like this brought to French courts. He spoke to us a little earlier on and tells us more about what this trial means to his clients and other victims.
It's a very important day, and it was very moving to spend that day in court with, at last, one suspect, one of the alleged perpetrators of the genocide, in the box, detained and at last answering questions from a French court.
And why do you think it took so long for a country like France, which very much prides itself on its human rights record, to bring a case like this to trial?
I think there are a number of reasons of different natures. One of them is political. France was supportive of the Hutu regime until the genocide. And to say the least, France made a very serious political mistake in supporting Habyarimana until the last minute. At least a serious mistake, if not something more serious than that. And in the aftermath of the genocide, many of the perpetrators came to France because they thought it would be a safe haven, and facts prove them right to a certain extent, because complaints have been filed by NGOs, by the FIDH, the International Federation for Human Rights, as early as 1995 that haven't yet ended. So some of the investigations have been going on for almost 20 years. Today's case, Simbi Kangwa, is a bit different because he was arrested in 2008, late 2008, approximately at the same time as the relationship between France and Rwanda was improving, was warming up, with Sarkozy visiting Kagame and vice versa. And since that period, 2009, 2010, French investigators have been allowed to travel to Rwanda to make their investigations, to interrogate witnesses, look for witnesses. So it was a bit of France's fault, a bit of Rwanda's fault, but it took so many years, and at last it's moving now.
Simon Foreman there speaking to us a little earlier on. The hundreds of anti-terror units flooded the Tunis neighbourhood of Rawid on Tuesday as the National Guard stormed a suspected militant hideout. 7 alleged members of the ultra-conservative Islamic group Ansar al-Sharia were killed. Amongst them was the suspect in the 2013 assassination that kicked off a year of political turmoil. Authorities say that Kamel Gadgadi was behind the gunning down of secular opposition figure Chokri Belaid on February 6th last year. Amisha Benoit Lavelle's in Tunis for us. He tells us more about the convenient timing of the announcement of Gadgadi's death.
The Minister of the Interior certainly presented it as a fortunate timing, even going so far as to say that it was the Interior Ministry's gift to the Tunisian people on the anniversary of Belaid's death. Perhaps a somewhat morbid gift, but certainly counted it as a point of pride. However, some journalists and bloggers here have already reacted with skepticism. Not skepticism, of course, to the fact that Mr. Gadgadi was killed, as images of Mr. Gadgadi's bloodied corpse were shown in graphic detail on national television, but skepticism to precisely, as you said, the timing of the event. You know, Besma Khalfawi, the widow of the slain politician Chokri Belaid, had been planning on organizing a demonstration on the anniversary of her husband's killing under the title, Who Killed Chokri Belaid? Well, it's almost as if the Interior Minister is presenting this as their answer to that question. Kamel Gadgadi killed Chokri Belaid, and in fact, throughout the press conference today, the Interior Minister did refer to him not as the suspect or the accused killer, but as simply the killer of Mr. Belaid. So some fear there that the timing of this, coming right before that anniversary, might muddy the waters as to any future investigation and trial into the killing.
Well, a year after France dispatched thousands of troops to help wrest northern Mali back from an Islamist militant invasion, the UN's warned the government that it can't slack off talks with rebel groups. The intervention scattered radical fighters, but progress on an interim deal struck with Tuareg independence groups last year has stalled. The UN fears the slowdown risks radicalizing insurgents. Speaking to France 24, the US's ambassador to the body urged Bamako to stick to the task at hand.
Mali's at a bit of a crossroads now, in the sense that it's come off a wave, about a year of consistent progress, vanquishing the bad guys, holding presidential elections and electing President Keita, who's made a commitment to fighting corruption, ending impunity, et cetera. I mean, really pushing a governance agenda, legislative elections. But they've slipped behind a little bit on the negotiations with the armed groups, as was called for in the accord that brought the conflict to an end.
After more than 2 decades of civil war in Somalia, peace is slowly returning to the capital, Mogadishu. That means more people are heading out to the beaches of a city some dubbed the Athens of Africa. Well, security is never far from authorities' minds, and recently, on the sandy shores, safety concerns have led to an investment not in police, but in lifeguards. Nicolas Germain has more.
In August 2011, the al-Shabaab jihadists were forced out of Mogadishu by the army and African Union soldiers. There are still sporadic attacks, but since then, there has been relative peace and stability. Today, crowds flock to the beaches, so much so that local authorities have trained a team of lifeguards.
I'm very happy that this project has been initiated, and it's saving lives. As you can see, there are lots of people here, not only from this area, but from all over the city, and from outside as well.
The lifeguards are mostly fishermen and are volunteers. The city provides fuel for their boats.
People often nearly drown because the waves are heavy, and they pull them away from the coast. And many don't know how to swim, so we go and rescue them.
Residents are relieved by their presence.
I come here every Friday, and I'm happy with the improvements being made because it allows me to swim safely.
As for the sharks that used to proliferate off the coast of Mogadishu, they are now rare, having fallen victim to Asia's vast appetite for fin soup.
Well, that wraps up African news for me. I hand you now back to Mark Owen with more news and headlines from around the world.
News in Live from Paris tomorrow. 2 appearances, of course, everything that's happening across the continent. We take a short break after that. It's another World News Update, plus we have sport for you. Joe Tandy with, well, a look at what could be the hip and trendy side of Sochi, snowboarding in all its forms. Stay with us.